this exposure is going to be upon us as well.
And there's only 6 days to get your statements in. This is starting as soon as September, a 5-year program. And like you said, they didn't even tell the local fishermen.
No, I was in Arcata, and I walked the boat ramps where the fishing boats dock and where the tour boats dock, and I was talking to people who live there who were walking around this marina, and I only found 2 people who vaguely knew something about the program, and that was it. But most of the fishermen had no idea of the toxic chemical exposure or the number of marine mammals that would be killed. They had no knowledge.
Rosalind Peterson is our guest. The number is 888-201-2244. We are live. It's the InfoWarrior with Jason Bermas, streaming over at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. We are back at InfoWarrior with Jason Bermas, and we're joined by an activist, researcher, and all-around expert on geoengineering. Rosalind Peterson, CaliforniaSkywatch.com is the website. And in my left hand for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers, I am holding the Sunday, August 24th, 2008 edition of the Record Searchlight, where you guys took out a paid advertisement asking if we were the experiment. Why don't you tell people about that?
Yes. Meredith Smith, in order to warn residents, because the newspapers weren't carrying any information to speak of on these issues, decided to put in a full-page ad, which she paid for herself, from the proceeds of the Mendocino Cafe, which she owns. And I helped design this ad, and we put it in all of the newspapers for the Mendocino coast. And so this full-page ad is exactly what we put in the newspaper so that people would start signing petitions and know what was going to be going on. And we received a tremendous response from people from this ad.
The experiment. Are illegal weather modification programs poisoning us and contaminating our land, water, and air? Here are the facts. You decide. Over 3 dozen Shasta and Siskiyou County labs test results taken from snowpack, rainfall, pond, and dust samples show off-the-chart levels of aluminum, barium, and strontium. Tests performed by Basic Labs, a state-certified lab in Redding, California. Remember, most of this stuff are their own documents, folks, their own tests. Alarming local lab tests reveal accumulated contamination. Tests performed by Basic Labs, a state-certified lab in Redding, California. A Lake Shasta sample from Peter River Arm tributary tested a 4,610,000 UGL or ppb parts per billion, over 4,610 times the MCL maximum contaminant level. Let me read that again. 4,610 times the maximum contaminant level. These numbers are off the charts.
That's correct.
I mean, you read this stuff and it's unbelievable.
Yes, and that ad was taken out by residents of Shasta County in northeastern California.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just unbelievable stuff. You know, we discussed the cap and trade bill while we were out in Ukiah as well. Why don't you tell people what the cap and trade bill is really about?
Well, there's a bill, an energy bill, that's going to come up before the U.S. Senate. It's already been passed by the House of Representatives. And this bill is an energy bill, supposedly. But what it's really going to do is it's going to set up a cap and trade system. And the system means that they're going to be lowering the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act standards. And they're going to say, well, we're going to take polluters just of carbon dioxide, CO2, nothing else but just CO2, and we're going to cap the emissions from corporations and different entities at a certain level. And then if these corporations want to pollute more, they can be given free emission credits like printing money, or they can pay for these offsets or credits by purchasing them in stock market situation where the banks are going to be funding this and being involved in this particular endeavor.
But Rosalind, that doesn't sound like they're going to be stopping polluters at all. It just seems like they're going to be taxing them for polluting them and allowing them to pollute as much as they'd like. We're going to come back and discuss it. It's the InfoWarrior with Jason Bermas, PrisonPlan.tv, Infowars.com. Strip down this cap and trade bill, what it really means is higher taxes for you and me, more control over your life, what kind of house you're able to have, what kind of car you can drive, how many kids you're allowed to have, how much trash you're able to create before you start getting taxed heavily. Meanwhile, the bigwigs out there are just going to get a bunch of corporate welfare and special programs and give the appearance that they're paying their fair share while never stopping polluting, because this isn't about stopping pollution. This is about doling out, quote unquote, carbon credits to people and really restricting what they're able to do.
Well, it's not really restricting what the corporations are able to do. It's just
I'm talking about the regular people. It's not restricting what the corporations are able to do at all. It's going to restrict, me or you, because they're going to say, well, if you create over 3 bags of garbage, you're going to have to pay a little more. Or if your car only gets 20 miles to the gallon, you're going to have to pay a little more. And if your house, goes over this certain energy limit, you're going to have to pay a little more.
Yes, they're going to put a tax on us, but they're going to allow the polluters to keep polluting at current or levels above what they do now, because what they're going to do is allow them to buy the right to pollute more. And what's interesting about these credits is that the U.S. government essentially, in issuing the credits, or the offsets as they're called, is going to be, it's the same as printing money. So the middleman in the stock market, because it creates a climate credit corporation, and this corporation is really awful, because then it's another money market scheme that's going to be literally unregulated, and so it's another mechanism to move money from, in other words, the poor segment and the middle class up into this corporate, where the corporations and the middlemen are going to make these huge profits. So, and the thing is that these offsets or credits, one of the things they're doing here in California with our public parks and public forest lands is they've already measured all of the trees, the circumference, diameter, height, and type, and age, and then they've figured out that the trees are worth so much as offsets or credits, which can be sold on the international stock market to polluters, so they can pollute more.
Explain how that works, because you described that while I was out in California. How does that work? Each individual tree has a certain amount of, carbon offset credits, and then people who don't even own the land are able to buy this up?
Yeah. In other words, someone could come to me because I have trees on my property, and they could offer me so much money for the credits from the trees that are on my property. And then what they would do is they would pay me just because I have the trees for the credits. And then what they would do is take these credits and offer them on the stock market to people who would buy them in order to be able to offset their pollution. So they're not reducing their pollution, they're just buying the right to pollute. And Governor Schwarzenegger and Speaker Pelosi have already invested in buying tree credits here in California from a middleman, and that was to offset their jet air travel, or the pollution that's created when they travel by jet. So what they've done is they've got the money to buy the right to pollute. They're not talking about laws and putting the EPA into place and saying, look, let's take polluters and let's fine them for polluting and take the money and put it into alternative energy sources. They're saying, well, we can just buy these so-called credits and then we can keep on polluting. And that's what the bill is about. It's about a market scheme. And we're going to be taken to the cleaners again, you and I.
I believe that 100%. What's the connection to Al Gore and this carbon credit system?
Al Gore is one of the owners of a corporation that is going to be buying and selling these pollution credits. And one of the things he did when he built his house is instead of making it a perfect environmental model of a house that someone would want because it's producing its own energy, it's got solar panels in it, all these things to make it really efficient and not use electricity, he put an electricity-guzzling house, essentially, built one, and then said that he was justified in doing that because from his own corporation he could buy the offsets in order to offset his pollution, or the credits to offset his pollution. And it was only when the public objected that he put a few solar panels on his house. But so the reason that he's so interested in this cap and trade legislation is not to reduce pollution, but because his investments and his corporate backers will make reap huge financial